going on 40. Worked out in the gym like crazy because I had been an athlete most of my life. And I developed low back pain. And I had low back pain so bad that I would crawl out of my car on my hands and then pull myself up by the door handles to stand up straight. Regulars having stress from time to time is not a bad thing. And so like in the primal days, if you had the saber-toothed tiger chasing you once in a while, it was not necessarily a bad thing. It kept you awake, okay? But if that tiger's chasing you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at some point you're going to have a heart attack and die. The car you can trade in, obviously the body you can't trade in. And it's like, so if you are not at an older age, you're in your 30s and 40s, now is the time to really start learning about how to maintain this body at optimal level so that when you get into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, it's really understanding that with your mind, by relaxing the mind as you put yourself in some of these stretch positions, because you only hold it for 5 seconds at a time, and you're repeating the stretch 10 times just to show the brain that you didn't die from it. You were okay. You didn't tear anything, okay? Once you get that piece down, now what happens is that it becomes more meditative. And so therefore you look forward to doing it every day because it's like little brain breaks.
Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. From debilitating back pain to transforming lives with his stretch and release technique, Butch Phelps is here to reveal the secrets to living pain-free and unlocking your body's true healing potential. Today's guest is Butch Phelps. It's not your average muscle expert. He is a self-proclaimed muscle nerd and the founder of the Muscle Repair Shop. Butch has revolutionized the way we understand chronic pain, combining years of personal experience, research, and innovative techniques to help people break free from muscle pain. From dropping over 100 pounds to overcoming debilitating back pain, Butch's journey is both inspiring and transformative. Today, we're diving into the unique stretch and release technique and uncovering the secrets to living pain-free. So whether you're feeling those nagging aches or just wanting to stay active and be pain-free, this episode is packed with actionable insights to help you move and live better. So let's get started. Let's welcome Butch Phelps to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Welcome, Butch.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So, Butch, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey in life. When we did the pre-discovery call for this podcast, you mentioned that you were on this journey doing other things and then kind of like stumbled across this, you created this technique. Tell us your story of, where you came from, how your highlights in your life, your challenges that you've overcome, and how you've got to this point.
Yeah, great. Exactly. I originally am from North Carolina. Of course, I live in Florida now, but most of my life I worked in corporate America till about 40 years old. Had little to no interest in healthcare. At first I wanted to be an engineer, and I wound up going into business, and I'm working with business. In my 30s, which would have been in the 90s, I went through a divorce and started ballooning up as an emotional eater and gaining weight. And I gained up to 315 pounds. Now I'm 6'4", so I was a pretty big dude walking around the street. But the 315 pounds were not very healthy. And according to my doctor, I was at a high risk of a stroke or heart disease. And she sort of gave me a wake-up call that I needed to lose the weight and do something with that. So she worked with me, taught me not only how to lose the weight, but also how to maintain my weight once I lost it. And I managed to lose 105 pounds in 18 months following her advice. It wasn't any specific diet, because I know many people in the audience and people I've talked to have said to me, so what diet were you on? What diet were you on? Just like, it was not a specific diet. What it was about was how is my relationship mentally with food? Because again, I was an emotional eater, which most people are. And so she taught me how to eat not only the right foods, but what order to eat them in. And we can talk about that more in depth later. I lost the weight and my body started to look good. And I thought, well, I want to really work out and really buff myself out. I'm 39 years old, going on 40, worked out in the gym like crazy because I had been an athlete most of my life. And I developed low back pain. And I had low back pain so bad that I would crawl out of my car on my hands and then pull myself up by the door handles to stand up straight. If I had to meet somebody, I never wanted to sit down because I didn't know if I could get back up if I sat back down. And I thought, this is insane. Went to doctors, typically, like most people would do. They would shoot x-rays, MRIs, they'd send you to PT, they'd give you some painkillers and muscle relaxers. Some of them even offered injections. And I knew enough then at the time that I didn't want to do that. And I was trying to figure out ways that I could solve the problem. A few things worked temporarily, maybe last for a day or two, then it would come right back. So it just became a nagging problem. And so I decided with my job that I had to take an early retirement at 40. Not much of a retirement, but I was ready to move on from that career. And I said to my wife, I want to find something that will help me give back to society. So I took a year off, really started to look and see what I really would fit. And I decided that massage therapy was the place I wanted to be. So I went and got into a massage school, and it was like the most weird, not weird, but I guess the most inspiring part of my life was I get into this massage school and I start to learn about the human body from the muscle standpoint. And I said to my wife, I feel really strange. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I feel like that somehow I already know this stuff. This stuff is coming
Mm,
together for me so fast that it's like somehow I have studied this in another life almost.
mm,
Um, and then as I started to get through this, my teachers would start to ask me during the breaks if I would work on their neck and shoulders. And then as my career went on and I got into the clinicals on my second year, the dean of the school said, you know anything about fibromyalgia? And I said, well, no. I had, like I said, I'd not really studied health a lot, but I said, I can start looking up and see what I can find. He said, well, my wife has it, and I just think that you'd be the right guy to work on her. And I'm like, okay. So I started working on her. Well, then she started feeling better. Um, and then I was introduced to a guy named Aaron Mattis with active isolated stretching. And he offered me the chance to study with him for 6 months, no cost to me. And his stretching changed my life because he taught me how to really stretch correctly. From there, I volunteered at a local senior center. They had 54 retired physicians there. Now, keep in mind, I was a massage therapist at the time, and I started to work on some patients that they had there. And one day I was sitting there, and two of the doctors said to me, what are you doing in that room? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you're changing people. I said, good or bad? And he goes, well, good. He said, we're just curious as to what you're doing because their bodies are changing. So I started showing him what I was doing. And then the head of the physicians was a retired neurosurgeon. It was an older lady. And she took me sort of under her wing and she said, let me teach you some things about the spine. And she started going into detail about it and helping me understand that with muscles, wherever the pain is, that's not necessarily where the cause is. And so, which opened my eyes to that aspect of it. And then finally, I went to a class on dementia that was given by a researcher in neurosurgery. And he started talking about dementia, started talking about the brain's relationship with the muscles. And something in my head clicked. And I started asking him questions. And finally, he said, what do you do? And I told him, and he said, let's talk. And so we must have emailed back and forth for 3 or 4 months. And he really started teaching me how the brain works with the muscles and how the
mm,
muscles are really the slave to the brain. And
mm.
when I saw that, a light bulb went off. And with all the training I had from the mentors I had in my life, it just took off from there.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. It's amazing. That's an amazing story, and it's interesting how what you said about where whatever the symptoms are is it's not where it's originating from, you know. And I remember
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, about a month ago, going to the dentist, and so and I was as I was sitting there in the chair, excuse me, I said to this hygienist, I said, do you realize that you have a lot of people that come and sit in this chair, and all you're doing is maybe helping them with the symptoms, right? But you're
Hmm.
not actually getting to the to the root cause. And I said,
Exactly.
a lot of it is in the mind.
Yes.
And she
Yes.
just went, I never thought of it that way.
That is a common reaction I get. Trust me. Yeah, it's when you look at the muscles of the human body, I mean, all the muscles is what helps you stand up. The bones give you shape and they give you protection, but the muscles is what helps you move. And
Mm.
so if you look at muscles almost like rubber bands pulling you from side to side, if the muscles on the front side get tight, the pain's going to show up on the backside because the tension's going to build on the backside because your brain is trying to keep you in balance all the time.
Yeah.
I've over the 20 years I've studied muscles, one of the things that I have learned, we don't do a very good job teaching physicians, therapists, people about their muscles. It's really kind of an insane
Yeah.
thing, but it's
Yeah.
been fun. It's been fun
Yeah.
learning.
And I just thought of an analogy of body versus a car. On
Hmm.
a car, you have tires and
Yes.
you have the axles and so on, right? And if you don't have good tires, then those are your muscles, right? But
Right.
uh, but if the alignment of the body is not good,
Hmm.
then you're not going to stand straight. So the car,
Hmm.
and someone actually a tire expert said to me once, he says, when your car is aligned and your tires are filled up, he
Yeah.
says your car will sit up straight and it will be
Yes.
yeah. So it's
Yes.
kind of like that to the body. So
So
what would
when
the
you think about that, playing off of that, when you think about
mm,
that, is that an alignment? So you always hear chiropractors talk about alignment with the bones,
mm,
and they're
mm,
constantly trying to adjust you to put your bones back in place. What we're missing there is the muscles themselves is what keeps the bones alive. So when you talk about the tires, when they're out of alignment, you wear the tires really funny, the inside outside of the tire. Well, the same thing happens in our joints. If the muscles are pulling the bones in different directions, you could wear out the inside of a knee or the outside of the knee or the inside outside of a hip. And so
mm,
most of the time when you're talking about people who have joints bone on bone, that started out as a muscle issue and out of alignment. That's what it came from.
mm, yeah, yeah. Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never thought of it that way. So, what was but your journey has of being a muscle expert has started it with your own pain, right? And
Hmm.
can you share what that experience was like and how it sparked your curiosity around that?
Absolutely. I mean, the pain was just immense. I mean, I can remember trying to stand up and it felt like somebody was stabbing me in my back,
Mm,
especially my lower back. And it was debilitating because when I would get out of my bed, now keep in mind, I was 40 years old. I would get out of my bed and have to crawl out on my knees and then pull myself up with a dresser to stand up straight. Like I said earlier, I'd get out of my car, put my hands on the ground, and pull myself up by the door handle because standing up straight was very difficult to do. And so the thought of lifting something, the thought of having to sit for a while was something that changed because I had to really think about if I sit there for a while, how do I get back up? And when you
mm,
think about you're 40, 41 years old, that's insane because who at 41 would think about that? And
yeah.
I would go to doctors and they're like, well, you're getting into your 40s. That's probably just the beginning thing of aging. And I said to one doctor, if this is the way it is, let me die now. I don't want to spend 20, 30 more years with this.
Mm,
But they don't have any answers. And in defense of the doctors, just like with everybody else in healthcare, we don't really teach people about the muscles the way we should. In a class in anatomy, you'll learn the names of the muscles, where do they attach and insert, and what do they move. And that's most of the basic questions you'll get. They'll get some about the spindles of the muscles and so forth on the chemistry side. But when you look at it from the physical side and you think about everything you think, feel, and do is going to affect the tension in your muscles. And so when you look at that, you can have thoughts where you're worried all day. And I'm sure if you've done that, most people will understand what I'm saying. You feel tired by the end of the day. And all you did
mm,
was just worry about it. You didn't lift anything heavy, but you feel tired. And the reason for that is that worry causes those muscles to tighten up. So I always say to my clients, the best way to think about muscles is take a rubber band between your fingertips and twist it, twist it, twist it. What you'll notice as the rubber band is twisting, it'll start to get a little shorter between your fingers. But
mm,
the rubber band itself didn't get any shorter and it's not going to get any longer. You just twisted it up. Well, that's how when you get tension in your muscles, that's what you do is you twist that up. But when you stretch, you're actually unwinding that rubber band and releasing that tension. And now it goes back to its normal length. Well, if you think about that the
mm,
rubber band is attached on each end, if I'm twisting it, I'm causing more tension on the joints on each end, which is going
mm,
to cause damage to that joint.
mm, mm.
And
Yeah,
that's where we mess up with the muscles with that.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, at almost 54, I've got a few aches and pains here in my hip area, and I know that I know that I've got to stretch. Um,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
always do it, and it's something that I've got to get really mindful about.
Yeah,
Hey, I've got to do this,
right,
otherwise, when I'm older, I'm going to
right,
struggle, right? And
right,
uh,
exactly. Yeah.
and I've heard this saying from the mindset mentor Rob Dial, and I think other people have said this as well. Um, do you want to do the hard things now and have an easier life later, or do you want to
Hmm.
have the easy stuff now and have a harder life? So
Right.
I guess, do we want to, make sure that we're stretching, strengthening our
Mhm.
bodies so that it's going to carry us into the future? Yeah.
Right, right, right.
So,
And the thing to think about with that is, and he's absolutely right. But the thing to think about is from a mindset issue, is understanding the importance of what you're doing when you
mm,
stretch. So when people think of stretching, they think of the way we did it in gym class when we were in school. And you
mm,
pull for long periods of time, pull as hard as you can, and it hurts like heck, you know? The truth of the matter is that when you do that, when you pull for 20, 30, 40 seconds at a time and pull as hard as you can, you're doing resistance training, which is strength training. You're not
mm,
stretching, okay? And the thought process that, and you'll hear everybody talk about in the muscle world, we're lengthening our muscles. Well, technically you are, because you're taking the tension out, but you're not. The vision most people get is that they're pulling their muscles almost like spaghetti, just about, or taffy. It's not going to get any longer. You're not going to wake up one day and the muscles in your thighs will be long enough for a guy 7 feet tall. So the thing is that the stretching then, because it's such a emotional component of the muscles as well as a physical component, the stretching then becomes a daily activity for 10, 15 minutes a day, in the morning and in the evening most of the time. And so when we think of a dog or a cat, they stretch every day, several times a
mm,
day. Okay.
mm,
We've turned this into something too difficult.
mm,
And the one thing I always laugh with my clients about is that they work really hard. They work really hard to make this very complex. And my stretch and release technique is not complex. It's really understanding that with your mind, by relaxing the mind as you put yourself in some of these stretch positions, because you only hold it for 5 seconds at a time, and you're repeating the stretch 10 times just to show the brain that you didn't die from it. You were okay. You didn't tear anything. Okay.
mm.
Once you get that piece down, now what happens is that it becomes more meditative. And so therefore you look forward to doing it every day because it's like little brain breaks.
Mm. So it just becomes part of your life, right? You're
Yeah,
just
yeah,
doing it. You're just doing it, and I just did that now. I just stretched
yeah,
and
yeah,
released
yeah,
and stretched and
yeah.
released. Yeah,
I mean, like if you're
yeah,
sitting in front of a computer every 45 minutes to an hour, get up, walk around.
yeah.
Don't just sit there until your bladder fills up and you have to go to the restrooms. Get up and walk around,
Exactly.
because the thing is you sat there, you're tightening the muscles on the front side, but it's going to cause pain on the back side. So an easy thing to think about, your head weighs about 10 to 12 pounds. Well, when the muscles on the front side of your neck tighten, the muscles on the outside of your chest tighten as you sit in a chair, as the head continues to lean forward, every inch your head leans forward, the pressure on the back of your neck increases by 10 pounds. You might have as much as 40 pounds of pressure back there by the time you get off work, you see.
Mm,
So
mm,
if
mm,
you could do little things like get up out of the chair, take your hands under your chin, stretch the front of your neck out as you come up straight, and be easy with that, you'll be amazed. I mean, I see people 80, 90 years old who are doing things they haven't done in 10 years.
mm. Yeah. So in your journey, what were the turning points for you when you realized that the traditional way of solutions weren't working for you?
Yeah. Yeah. It was actually after I got into the massage school and I met Aaron Mattis. Uh,
Mm,
he created what's called active isolated stretching, which my stretching and the stretch and release technique is based on, but I'd use more with the brain than he has done in the past. And so, but what I saw with that is that we are trying to stretch multiple muscles at one time. In other words, you go to a stretch class and it's tighten your abs and tighten your hips and pull here and pull there. We're going to get the thighs and we're going to get the glutes and No, 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 no. Your brain has to let go of the tension in your muscles. You cannot pull that out. I mean, you're not going
Mm,
to
mm,
force that. And it's like, once I figured that out, I realized that what we've been taught as athletes and as students in school with PE and so forth just doesn't work. And it's amazing to me how many professionals still teach it that way today.
mm,
I mean,
mm.
I'm going to be 65 in March. I wake up with no pain. I do whatever I want every day, and I don't have pain and deal with any type of an injury. And my doctors are always amazed. And so when I go to see them, half of my appointment is teaching them how to do the stretches.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, yeah. How did losing the 105 pounds change your body, and why do you think it led to such severe back pain?
Two reasons. Number one, the losing the 105 pounds. I mean, if you can imagine, my wife was about somewhere around 120s. I lost 105 pounds, which is almost as much as she weighs. So if you can imagine, if every morning I got up, she would jump on my back, wrap her arms around my neck, and ride on my back all day. That's what it feels like to have 100 extra pounds on your
Wow.
body. And so when you take that kind of weight off, not only do you look in the mirror and you go, wow, this is amazing, but the
Mm,
fact that you can get up and move and not feel tired, not feel out of breath, not hurt in all kinds of places is amazing. The second thing is when you weigh that much and you're over 100 pounds overweight, your energy levels are low. So the idea of sitting in a recliner or laying on the sofa becomes so much easier because just to get up and walk across the room, I mean, again, if you're carrying a 100-pound bag of something on your back, just to move across the room is hard.
yeah.
And I always say to people, it's like, everybody's like, you need to get out and exercise more. Nobody who's 100 pounds overweight, unless they have a really strong mental attitude, is going to get up and do all that. I can tell you that right
Mm,
off the bat.
yeah.
And it's like when you start to make that movement and that weight starts to come off, it is exhilarating to watch that happen. Now,
Mm,
how it led to the back pain was the fact that not having the energy to get up and move and sit all the time literally started to cause the muscles on the front of my hips, the muscles on the front of my thighs, the muscles on the inner thighs to tighten up. So when I would try to stand up, it would pull my pelvis forward, which would increase the compression lower part of my back. So if you think about the spine, the thighs control the positioning of the pelvis forward or backwards. Okay. So when you see guys, sometimes you'll see guys who have big bellies, and I've heard people say it's like he has no butt back there when he stands up. Well, what's happening is that to counter out or counterbalance the belly on the front, he has to tighten the hamstrings on the back, which pulls the pelvis underneath him, makes it look like he has no butt. But if he doesn't do
mm,
that, he'll fall forward, you see.
mm.
But when the hamstrings get tight like that, now when he tries to bend over, it becomes very painful to do that. And to sit for long periods of time can be very painful as well. So
Yeah.
that weight is like being pregnant for a long time and
Yeah.
having all that
So,
weight on the front of you.
so I find that my hamstrings are quite tight and my calves are quite
Yeah.
tight because
Yeah.
I mean I'm not a big person. I don't have a I mean I weigh about 86 kilos.
Hmm.
I'm about 180 centimeters
Sure.
tall
Hmm.
and 86 kilos. It fluctuates between 86 and 84. But
Right.
would that be would that mean that that my muscles are also trying doing the similar thing?
Yeah, similar things, absolutely. And so what you'll find a lot of times is when you the first thing first, so when you get into the calves, you have four calf muscles there. Now,
Mm,
most people when they do a calf stretch, they lean against the wall, drop their heel off of a step, or they'll stand on a slant board and they think they're stretching their calves. And most professionals will tell you that's how to do it. I'm here to tell you if that's how you stretch your calves, you've never stretched your calves in your life. You only stretch your Achilles tendon. So you have four
mm,
calf muscles there, and there's two bones in that lower leg. So those four calf muscles, what they do is they control your foot vertically for like walking. They control your foot laterally for supination, pronation, which is about balance. Okay. But they also control your foot rotationally. As an athlete, if you're a golfer, tennis player, baseball player, the rotation of your hips starts at the ankle with those four calf muscles. But yet we never
mm,
teach anybody how to do that, which is
mm.
insane. Okay. So that's where that starts. Well, now when you get to the hamstrings, there's three of those hamstrings. And most people, when they stretch their hamstrings, they lay flat on the floor. One leg is straight out, the other leg they lift up and they grab with their hands to pull towards their chest. You're not stretching your hamstrings. You're doing resistance training with your leg. You're doing a bicep curl with your leg, is what you're doing. Two things happen there. Number one, you're only stretching at best the middle muscle if you get any stretch at all. And number two, your pelvis, there's no bend there. So as the leg gets higher and higher, you're actually start to lift the leg that's straight out in front of you. So you're literally lifting the weight of both legs there. Okay. What I do is I teach people with a yoga strap how to stretch their four calf muscles, but also how to stretch their three hamstrings. And when you unlock those, not only can you put your pelvis back into place, but when you do rotational movements, it has less and less effect on your back as well. And so
Mm,
when people talk about plantar fasciitis with the pain in their heel, or they'll have they walk on the outside of their foot where they supinate or pronate. Everybody wants to put things in their shoes. Your calf muscles control the positioning of your foot. And that's
mm.
important because when your ankle can't bend when you walk the way it's supposed to beyond 90 degrees, you'll lead with your nose, which will give you neck and shoulder pain coming from your calf muscles.
Yeah, and your mind is your brain's remembering all those things,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Because the brain's job is to keep you safe. And so if you lead with your nose to get the momentum so you don't fall over backwards.
So I know, and on this podcast it would be hard to show, difficult to show how you stretch your calves. Can you talk us through how
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
can? Yeah.
What the first thing you want to get is an 8-foot yoga strap or like an 8-foot rope.
Mm,
I when I do mine, I sit on the floor with my hips and back against the wall and one leg straight out in front of me. Now, if
mm-hmm,
you can't get on the floor, you can sit in a hardback chair like a dining room chair with an ottoman. Put one leg up on the ottoman. So when you do the stretch, you're going to put the strap around the ball of your foot and
mm-hmm,
you're going to have it hold it in both hands and you're going to gently pull the toes back towards you. Don't use your leg muscles. That leg should be totally relaxed. You're going to gently pull the toes back towards you as you breathe out because you want to focus on the calf muscles in the middle up behind your knee there.
mm,
When I was younger and people would talk about stretching your hamstrings, I thought if I bent forward to touch my toes and I felt pulling behind my knee, that was my hamstrings. That's really my calf muscles is what I'm feeling.
yeah.
So I'm going to pull my toes gently behind. As I pull the toes, I'm breathing out and just feeling the muscle releasing tension. I'm not going to feel stretch. I don't want to feel pain because if I feel pain, the brain's going to contract it. Okay.
Mm,
I'm going to hold that stretch for 5 seconds. And during that 5 seconds, let my brain see that that's safe. I'm going to
mm,
release it and I'm going to repeat that 10 times. The 10 times is literally so that your brain can see you didn't die from that. Okay.
no.
And
So you're
once the
training your
brain
brain.
knows, yeah, yeah. So
Mm,
once the brain knows that, now all of a sudden the brain is like, hey, we can do this. This is easy. Once you do that 10, rotate the whole leg inward and you do the same stretch again, but this time you'll feel the release more to the outside of the calf. Okay.
mm,
And again, you're going to hold that 5 seconds. You're going to repeat 10 times. When you're done, rotate the foot outward, the whole leg outward, so you'll feel it on the inside. And
right.
so they can, I've got 150 free videos on my YouTube channel at the Muscle Repair Shop. And I've got things in there that can specifically go and see how to do that right on the channel for free.
Wow. We'll put the links
Got it.
into the
Yep.
podcast. Okay, so what is the science? What is the secret behind the stretch and release?
So the real secret to it is understanding the power of the brain with your muscles. If
Mm,
you pull too hard and you create pain, you get a lot of people who are in the no pain, no gain camp. And if you create that kind of pain, the brain, understanding that the brain is about keeping you alive and keeping you safe. Once you have
mm,
a lot of pain, you go into what's called the fight or flight response. And the brain then will contract muscles to get you out of that danger.
mm,
That's the real key to the whole thing. It's not about pressure. It's not about how much pressure, how hard can I pull this? Because again, we're not pulling taffy. All we're doing is getting the muscles to release. And so it's a mindset shift. And I always say to people when they come to my office, it takes about 3 visits really to understand that mindset shift. And then once they do, the key to it then is for them to just start doing the stretching, because my goal is to get them on their own doing the stretching. And I do the same thing online when I talk to people online too, is understand there's a mindset shift here. You know, strength training and stretching go hand in hand. You go back to the car thing. Strength training is more like the gas you put in your car for power. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Stretching is like the oil you put in the engine for lubrication. So
Mm,
the more you can move your joints through their normal range of motion, the more synovial fluid, which is like a WD-40 that the body puts in the joint itself. It's a cushioning agent and also a lubricant there. And that takes the pressure off the joint so your joints can stay healthy. And then when they can do that and you can move through your different ranges of motion, the ankle rotating takes pressure off the knee joints, takes pressure off the hip joints, takes pressure off the back. You know, the hips themselves, the placement of the pelvis takes the pressure off the back. The only thing that can apply pressure to your body are your muscles. And I gave this talk to a room full of doctors once, and I said to them, think about this. Even you have a quadriplegic laying on a bed. He has all the bones you and I have, but he
mm,
can't get up off that bed. And so, therefore, the bones cannot move without the muscles applying pressure to them. So the
mm,
muscles apply pressure to your bones, which can lead to bulging discs, which can lead to damaged joints if they're not in the right way, and can press on nerves for pinched nerves and so forth, and even press on blood vessels. So the idea here is to get your mind to release the tension in your body so that you can release the tension in your muscles. And what the stretch and release does is, with the stretch side of it, puts you in a position and then teaches you how to use your mind to do that.
yeah. Wow. Wow. And how does this differ from traditional methods
That's a great question.
or
So,
therapies?
tr
Yeah.
right. So traditional therapies, in other words, you take and you grab your foot, you grab your leg. Sometimes they'll even use a yoga strap too. And a little caveat: if somebody ever hands you a stretchy band to stretch with, lay it down and run from there as quick as you can, because that's not stretching, that's strength training. But they may use a strap like a yoga strap as well. The difference is that they take the brain out of it. The thought process is that if I pull this long enough, that the muscle is going to give up. The muscle's fighting with me. So if I pull this long enough and hold it, then the muscle itself is going to finally say, okay, I give up. That's it. And it gives up. Not really true. What will
Mm,
happen for, and where some people feel think they feel progress, is that if you pull that long enough and the muscles contracts for a longer period of time, the muscle tissue will fatigue out. And for a little bit of time, it feels much better.
mm,
But the problem is that people only stretch whenever they feel the pain and then they stop.
mm, mm,
And not realizing that the role of the brain is everything you think, feel, and do causes tension in that muscle. So
mm.
even if you have a dream at night, your muscles are tense when you wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
That's the big difference.
Totally. To- Totally. Yeah. Mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my
Wow.
reaction when I first learned it too. I was like, are you kidding me? This is insane. I wish I didn't know this when I was an athlete.
And when you think about it, it's actually quite simple. It's not that
Yeah,
complex. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Can you explain why solving the root cause rather than just the symptoms is so important to long-term relief?
Yes. In fact, I'll use a example that the neurosurgeon that worked with me in the beginning taught me. And she was showing me on the spine, and she said, for most times when you have a pain in your back and they do an MRI or do a scan and they see there's a bulging disc or a herniated disc, they're trained to go in and be able to fix that, and they're very good at that. Okay. The problem is that if you don't understand what caused that disc to bulge to begin with, and you just go in and repair it, you haven't changed anything in the body. So she said either the disc above or below will become damaged as well. And so the way to think about it is that if you go in and you have an injection and all of a sudden the pain goes away, there's a group of people, a portion of people who believe that if there's no pain, you must be okay, you must be healthy. But you can numb it. It's like going to the dentist. You go to the dentist with a toothache and he gives you a shot of lidocaine and novocaine to numb it. The pain goes away, but it didn't fix anything. You just numb the pain. Okay. So there's a group of people who believe that once that happens, they're free and clear. There's others who tend to think that, well, I'm 50 years old or I'm 60 years old. This is part of aging. Okay. And my background is in aging sciences. And the one thing that we learned was that that is not a part of aging. That's a part of bad mechanics, is what that is. And so if you try to push through that, and so you know, push through this pain, what you're going to do is you're going to cause more damage than what's necessary. So in my belief, and the way I see people coming into my office, if we could teach people at a younger age how to do work like this, I think we could reduce joint replacements by a significant number. Because what happens is we don't try to push through and create more and more damage to the body.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the mind-body connection and
Hmm.
in pain relief, right?
Hmm.
How do our emotions, like stress, mental well-being,
Hmm.
impact the muscle pain and the recovery from it?
Sure, absolutely. So when you're looking at that mind-body connection, of course, anytime that you are dealing with stress. Now, when I talk about chronic stress, some people tend to get a vision of the guy who's on the edge, about to lose everything. But for most people, they're dealing with chronic stress because they have deadlines to hit every day. They have appointments to make every day. Or they're going to get this done, or they're going to get that done. I got to get the kids to the school. I've got to go visit so and so for lunch. That becomes chronic stress because they're a lot of times we'll put 26 hours worth of things to do in a 20-hour period of time. So that creates stress. When the body's in that situation, the brain then starts to affect the muscle system, which puts tension on the joints, puts tension on the nerves, puts tension on the disc. It affects the digestive system, which can increase inflammation in those joints in the back and so forth, and even into the brain. Okay. Anytime there's inflammation, most people think of the joints and the spine, but it's also in the brain. And at the same time, it starts to affect the respiratory system. So you're breathing shallower. So you're not getting the oxygen in your body that you need. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so the chronic stress actually is worse for you than regular stress. Regular
Mm,
having stress from time to time is not a bad thing. And so like in the primal days, if you had the saber-toothed tiger chasing you once in a while, it was not necessarily a bad thing. It kept you awake. Okay. But if that tiger's chasing you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at some point you're going to have a heart attack and die. There's just no way around it. Okay. And what we deal with the people today is they're literally living a life as if the saber-tooth tiger was chasing them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so what happens is that it causes all those systems to start to break down. And then the body itself
mm,
starts to break down at that.
yeah. So does that means that when you're in chronic stress, the amygdala is kicking in and it's trying to keep
Yeah.
you fight and flight, freeze.
Yep. All the
So
time.
yeah, and you're constantly going on that because your logical brain shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not able to make, your frontal lobe is not
Mm-hmm.
able to make the decisions, the executive center.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's right.
so it's about learning to flip that so that, or
Mm-hmm.
turn back on the logical brain so that you can start to, take the
Right.
pressure away. So
Mm-hmm.
is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And
A-
so
And
the stretch and release gives you that brain break that takes a break.
yeah, yeah. So uh, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And the other thing is, our mind, your physical brain is the organ, but our
Hmm.
mind is actually all through our body, isn't it?
That's right.
All
That's
through our,
exactly right.
yeah, yeah,
For
our
every, I mean,
nerves.
if you think about it, if you got the tiger chasing you, well, you're not going to want to stop to eat anything. You're not going to want to stop and go to the bathroom.
No,
You
you're not
certainly don't
gonna.
want to have sex with anybody. You're just running for your life, and you hope you're faster than the guy next to you because you'll live.
Yeah,
That's where people are every day. If so many people are every day, it's a tough
yeah,
thing. It's a tough thing.
yeah. I was listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza
Hmm.
on a podcast with Lewis
I
Howes, and
love him. Yeah, he's my favorite.
he's awesome. I just bought his book, Being Supernatural,
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah.
amazing. Looking forward to getting into it. And but he talks about how you're constantly in that you
Hmm.
know being chased by a saber-tooth tiger or a T-Rex, and it's like
Hmm.
you're just focusing on where you're going and how
Hmm.
fast you can get there, right? To
Hmm.
save yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so
Hmm.
you so when you're in this stressful environment, then your body's just going. It's just you
Yeah,
know
it's going nuts. It's just going nuts.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your CPU, you're just wow.
Exactly right. Exactly
Wow.
right. And so when you see people, and I get people of all ages up to mid 90s coming in, I love talking to people and working with people who are 85 plus.
Mm,
And I have some that are just doing spectacular. You would think they'd be 70 years old and they're 90 years old. And I always ask them, what are their secrets? And they always have almost usually seven commonalities they have. They're always learning. They have great
mm,
relationships with friends and spouses.
mm,
They eat healthy. They work out
mm,
every day.
mm,
They have a purpose every day.
mm,
And they spend time alone with their thoughts.
mm,
And so when you and almost every one of them to a T will tell you and that will six things will tell you those six things. And it's one of the things that I've learned and put into my life. We don't take the time to just sit with our thoughts. And so
mm.
what I do with the stretch and release in my life, and I do it 15, 20 minutes in the morning, 15, 20 minutes in the evening, is I take that time to just sit with my thoughts and feel my body and allow
Mm,
everything to just let go.
mm.
Makes a big
Yeah,
difference in your life.
yeah. And so meditation, sitting in that stillness and really reflecting on
Yeah.
what's and being aware of what's going on in
Hmm.
your mind and your as again as Dr. Joe Spencer says, your thoughts are the language of your mind and
Hmm.
your your feelings are the emotion and languages of your body language of your body.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so if you're not think if your thoughts, your actions and your feelings are creating your personal your current reality, then we've got to change our personality to be able
Hmm.
to change our personal reality, right?
That's
Um,
exactly right.
yeah. So, wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's all come. This is just,
Well, I mean, a lot of times when I talk to health professionals, they'll go, "Yeah, but you're getting into psychology, not just I'm into physiology." And I'm like, "But as a human, we are both psychology and physiology. And the
yeah.
psychology controls the physiology, and then the physiology controls the psychology. Because again, as I go into that fight or flight, if I'm staying there, I'm creating inflammation in my body from my thought process. Okay. And then that inflammation in my body comes back and inflames my brain, creating more of the problems in my thought process. So one is if you think of like the vagus nerve, for instance, is sending
Mm,
messages from the body to the brain back and forth. And so 80% of those messages or so are going to the brain while 20% are coming back down. As these two things are not working coherently together, it creates a massive amount of inflammation in both the brain and the body, which affects your thoughts and affects your physiology at the same. You can't separate them.
no, no. And you've got to have that coherence because it's
Yeah,
firstly it's the you've got the heart brain coherence and then you've got the gut brain
yeah.
coherence as well, which is the vagus nerve. So
Yeah,
what's
because that gut, your gut is your second brain.
exactly.
It creates more serotonin and dopamine than the brain does.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your heart is your biggest energy center,
Yeah.
which sends a signal to your brain to say,
Yep.
hey, start creating this reality, because
Exactly right.
your brain doesn't know between imaginary and reality.
That's
And
true.
and when you feel it with your emotions, then that's when the brain goes, okay, I'll start creating this. So
Exactly right.
what's the game changer? Why is it such a game changer between physiology and psychology for healing? What's the secret
So
there?
so the thing is that, again, when I work with people who are in their 80s and 90s, they have issues just like other people where they go and they have minor surgeries here or there. The mindset shifts a lot because instead of them looking at, oh my gosh, I'm just so unlucky, I'm just this, I'm that, many times they'll say to me, at 89, I feel pretty lucky. This is the only thing I've ever had happen to me. And they go into this process. And I mean, some of them had some serious surgeries and they come back out and they're back walking 5Ks, they're back working in their yard, they're back doing the things that they like to do. The mindset is I can heal myself.
Mm,
Joe Dispenza talks about that a
it
lot.
does. It
And
does.
it's like if you look at something and go, I just have nothing but bad luck. Everything is just happening wrong for me. It's like life is working against me all the time. You take yourself out of that healing mode is what you do. Whereas if you look at it and say, this was a setback, but it was just that. It was a setback. And now I'm going to
Mm.
move forward.
Yeah.
And as you start to find ways and learn, in other words, like for me, having that 105 pounds that I took off in 1998, learning how to maintain my weight. So when I lost it in 98, from 98 to 2020, I did not gain a pound back. I mean, how many people do you see? They go on a diet, they lose 25, 50, or 100 pounds, and then a year later, they gained it all back. They learned how to lose the weight, but didn't learn how to maintain it. So in 2020, I had a primary care physician. She kept talking to me about my BMI. My BMI was high. I was 6'4", 210 at the time. And it was during a pandemic. And I said to my wife, well, my office is closed down. I've got nothing else better to do. And I had said to her, my doctor, what weight should I be? Well, between 180 and 190. So I said to my wife, I'm going to see what 180 looks like. So I spent the next 4 months and I lost 30 pounds based on what I'd learned when I lost 100 pounds. So truly, I've lost 135 pounds total. But my weight that I lost in 2020, I haven't gained a pound since 2020. Okay. And
Mm.
so you have to learn from that. And so when you do something that affects your health, if you go and a doctor treats you and he solves that problem and you go back to what you were doing before, you didn't learn anything. And you're going to be
Mm.
back and it may be worse the next time. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that as a person, as a human, we're lucky to have physicians and therapists and so forth who can help us with our lives, but we have to pay attention and learn that, okay, so smoking a cigarette or drinking too much alcohol or eating too many bad foods really raised my diabetes or really caused me to have high blood pressure. I now need to learn that I can't do that. My body doesn't like that.
Yeah.
And when you
Absolutely.
start to do that, that's when it changes.
Mm. And I was just going to say that it's about setting the intention of
Yeah.
who you want to be, right?
Hmm.
Where you want to be, and then making sure that your attention is there as well, because where your attention goes, your energy
Hmm.
flows. So,
Absolutely.
for me, I'm mindful that eating
Yeah.
crisps, chips are not good for
Hmm.
me,
Right.
and occasionally do.
Hmm.
I don't beat myself up for it. I go,
Nope.
it's okay.
Nope. Yep.
Just just stay mindful
Yes.
about it
Yes. Yes.
and watch what you consume,
Well, that's true.
because
It's like, I mean, and sometimes people get the image of me, my friends, that I eat perfect all the time. But that's just not true. The thing is, and what I said to them, because most of the time I'm really conscious of what I put in my body, I'm really conscious of how I treat my body. If I
mm,
want to have a piece of cake or I want to have some chips or whatever, I could do that and get away with it. I just can't do it
mm,
every day. I can't go
yeah,
eat fast food every day. You
right,
see, and it's like, so that's the thing. It's understanding that I've got to have certain things for my body to function really well, whether it's food or
mm,
whether it's stretching or whether it's strength training. Because even in strength training, I mean, when we hit age 30, from age 30 on, we're losing 1% of our muscle mass. And where that's
mm,
important is that if we can maintain our muscle mass, the muscle itself consumes a lot of the glucose in the foods that we eat. It reduces a lot of the insulin spikes from the pancreas, okay? And the pancreas is a hormone that can actually cause you to hold on to the weight to store those calories. And it's like,
wow,
if you've got better muscle mass, you're going to have stronger bones. You're going to have better mobility. You're going to have better endurance that you can get up and move around. When you have flexibility, now you spend less energy just getting up and down out of a chair because you're not fighting stiffness. You can get up and down and move. I don't care if you're 85 years old. My mother's 86 years old. Now, she doesn't follow my plan, but because most mothers don't. But the reason is that my mother at 86 years old can bend over and pick up a piece of paper off the floor without bending her knees and stand up and not feel dizzy because she's
mm,
done it her whole life, you see.
mm, mm.
And
What?
so, go ahead.
No, what you just said has completely changed my life in this moment.
Yeah.
It's
And it's
completely
like,
changed it.
yes, you can. I mean, I've got people, guys who are in their 90s that at 87, one guy's 87, started a cattle ranch at 87 years of age. He started with a 5 acre piece of land, built a house and a small ranch. He's got about 10 head of cattle on it with hydroponic farms on it and so forth. At 87, he started that. At 93, he's still running it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
no,
you got to change that mindset.
it's just what you just said about the strength training and losing muscle mass and so on. That's just given me a wake up call because it's like
Yeah.
I haven't been doing the strength training and this is my opportunity to get back into it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that you know so that my body's functioning in harmony rather than
Yeah. Well,
being
yeah. Yeah, you got
yeah
Dr. Gabrielle Lyons,
disease.
who's well known for her muscle knowledge, and she talks about when she sees obese people, she sees people that are under muscle, not overweight.
Hmm.
Because if they had more muscle, they would actually wind up losing more weight.
Yeah, and this is key to your body being in dis-ease, which
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
causes the diseases, right?
Hmm.
That we
That's
have.
exactly right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the misconceptions that people have about stretching and muscle health?
There's several of them. The biggest one that I see is that they think they only need to stretch when they feel pain.
Mm,
That's probably the biggest thing. And it's like when I explain to them how the mind tenses the muscles even when you're not doing something physically, and then how to use that to be able to keep your body free. So in other words, instead of waiting till you have an injury, let's stretch on a daily basis so that that injury never occurs. Number one. Number two, we think it must be hard. I'm not sure if the way some people teach other people how to stretch is that they're trying to impress them with what they know, or they were just trained badly. What I see happening is that they really make it too hard.
mm,
Again, if you're fighting, if you're not thinking about how the brain works with the muscles, and you're only thinking your muscles are fighting with you, that becomes a chore. And nobody wants to do that because that's hard. It hurts. And who wants to do that? They just don't want to do that. And then secondly, as people, especially as people age, they think the stiffness is part of being older, which is not true. The stiffness comes from lack of movement, and it also comes from eating foods that are high inflammatory foods. That high inflammation will cause stiffness in the joints, cause stiffness in the back, even
mm,
cause some brain fog in the brain as well. So when you look at what they're eating, you look at how they live their lives. When I was in school studying aging sciences, one of the classes I had was saying that people over 60% of them sit in a recliner more than 6 hours a day watching TV. And when
mm,
you look at somebody, when you watch somebody sitting in a recliner from the side, look at how their body is shaped. Their heads leaning forward so they can see TV in most cases. They bend at their knees, they bend at their waist, and so all the muscles on the front of their body becomes in a tightened state. When they try to stand up over time, it becomes very difficult, and it requires a lot of energy and strength to pull themselves back up, which
mm,
causes pain. So therefore, they
mm,
don't want to do it, and they go back and they sit in a recliner because it feels better because their body's being molded to the shape of that chair. So
mm,
the myths of the stretching is number one, are not supposed to feel stiff when I get older. Number two, I only need to stretch when I feel pain. And then number three, they mess up on the fact of understanding how the food they eat has a lot to do with their stiffness as well. And so when you
mm,
get those in together and get those locked in, you can do it much better with your body.
mm. Yeah, yeah. What would you tell someone who's over 50 and who thinks that it's pain is just part of here aging, right? What would you say
Right.
to challenge their mindset?
So I was given a talk in a class at a senior center one day, and a guy stood up and he was saying that his knuckle on his index finger was hurting, and that it didn't happen until he was 72 years old, and you could tell the guy was convinced that 72 is what caused his knuckle to hurt. So I stopped him and I said to everybody in the room, how many people in the room are 72 and older? Probably half the room raised their hand. How many in the room has the right index finger knuckle hurts when you move the finger the way he moves his? And nobody raised their hand. And I said, so number one, we can say that 72 had nothing to do with that. Because if it did, everybody would have that. Okay.
Mm,
And then when we start talking about that, and I'll say to them, when you think about, okay, it didn't happen until I was 60. It took you 60 years to get there. People may have, like I've heard them talk about with heart attacks. You have a heart attack at 60. You started making that heart attack at 30. It didn't just happen at 60, okay? And so when you talk about stiffness, look back at your life. If you haven't been working on strength training and stretching and your diet for the last 15, 20, 30 years, that's where you started creating this problem. You created that problem in your own body, you see.
Mm,
And
mm,
so that's the thing that once I start talking to them about that, they go, I haven't stretched in high school. And you're how old? Well, I'm 75. Well, that's a long time not to stretch. You know, I haven't worked out since I was in college and I'm 59. Well, that's a long time not to lift any
mm,
weights or work out. So
mm,
yeah, think of your body in the terms of a car. I mean, if somebody gives you a brand new Ferrari and you put water in the gas tank and you don't change the oil in it, you don't grease the car and you don't maintain the car, what's the chances that Ferrari, which is a very expensive car, is going to be running well 10 years from now? Not
mm,
very high.
right.
I always think of your body like that Ferrari.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And your body is the most important, asset we
Yeah,
have.
without it,
Yeah.
there's no point doing anything else.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about small steps to big relief. How can
Yes.
listeners get started today?
Easily. They can go to my YouTube channel and see the 153 videos because I talk about various ailments. I talk about and I show you how to do the stretches there. The most important stretch of the human body is a stretch of the calves. The
Mm,
calves control everything because everything starts in your feet and works your way up. When you
right.
look at your foot, for instance, your foot has 33 joints, 29 muscles, and 26 bones in each foot. We basically put them in a cast called shoes. Okay. So we have arch supports, we have thicker soles because I want to feel like I'm walking on air. The thing is on the bottom of your feet, you have 272 nerve endings that sends messages to the brain that says the level of the ground is changing. You could fall. Adjust your muscles here. When I put a shoe on that has a thick sole, I'm messing with that messaging to my brain, which makes my risk of falling become really high. Okay.
Mm,
Secondly, with the calves, like I said earlier, with the movement of the ankles, it's going, if my ankle can't bend beyond 90 degrees, I'm going to wind up with a shorter stride. Okay.
mm,
That's going to lead to having more head forward posture because I'm going to lead with my nose. If the
mm,
ankle doesn't bend from side to side, my balance is not going to be very good. And if I can't rotate, I'm going to wind up hurting my knees and hips because I'm going to be
mm,
forcing it from above that. So when someone wants to start out with this and how to get to feeling better, that's the first place I would start is with those calves. And the
mm,
second thing is like if you sit behind a desk, I mean, taking your hands and just take your hands and let your chin rest right into the palm of your hands and then feel the weight of your head there. Take a few seconds and just feel how
mm,
heavy your head is. Let your
mm,
neck relax. Then use your arms and lift your head up. Now, when I mean lift your head up, and I just had this conversation today, everybody wants to, when I say lift your head up, the optimal way is you can go this far back. They want to go from here all the way to the full range of motion, and they can't even
mm,
turn their head right or left to see what's on the right or left side of them. That's never going to happen at this moment. Okay. So when you do that and you lift your head up, when you first feel this first sign of tension, stop, breathe out, hold it for the 5 seconds, and let your brain see that this is safe. Release it and come back and do it again. And do it that 10 times. You could easily do that. I've done that sitting at a stoplight. I mean, I've
mm,
got neck stretches on these videos. You could set and do at a stoplight. One of the things that I do when I go home at night is from my house. There's about 8 stoplights from between my office and my house. I love getting red stoplights because at every red stoplight, I'll do one set of neck stretches that I have just to have my neck loose by the time I get home. Okay. It
mm,
doesn't take time away from the rest of my day. So when I get home, I'm free to talk to my wife and so forth. But I'm taking those moments that otherwise I'd be complaining about what so and so did in their car next to me, that I can stretch my neck out and my neck will feel much better. This is the way I like to teach people. How can you incorporate it throughout your day so that you're not taking time away, but at the same
mm.
time you can keep yourself loose?
mm, mm,
Those are the two. If you were going to start with two things, that would be the two things I'd tell every human on the planet to start with.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And so how can someone, if their pain stems from deeper muscle
Yes.
versus, yeah, how can someone know if their pain is coming from deeper within the muscle or,
Yeah.
yeah, or a different
Yeah. Okay.
cause?
So,
Mm,
so what I do a lot of times when someone comes to see me or they talk to me online is we talk about what they're feeling. When do they feel the pain the most? In other words, what activities are they doing that cause it? Is it when you stand, when you sit, and so forth, to determine what areas of your body is dealing with that. So, an example, the most common thing is low back pain. That's the number one reason people go to doctors every day. If you stand up after sitting for a while and you feel your low back hurting, especially towards the outside of the low back, chances are what you're dealing with is one of the four quadricep muscles that are on the front of your thighs are tight and it's pulling the pelvis forward. If you stand for a while and the longer you stand, the worse your back feels. And it's on the outside of the back, same thing. If
mm,
the pain on your back when you stand up is more to the middle of your back, it's more likely one of the four inner thigh muscles. And so I have stretches for each of those muscles so that you can test each muscle to see which way it is. If you sit and while you're sitting, your back hurts and you feel a need to stand, or you don't want to sit because your back will hurt, that's usually a hamstring coming from there. Now, the muscles in the hips will be tight as well. And I teach people how to use a tennis ball against a wall to massage their hips and their back, and which is an easy thing because if you can keep your muscles soft, it works well. I always tease my clients that I make a living off of people with hard bodies and buns of steel
mm.
because that's not how we're supposed to be. The tennis
What?
ball is an interesting thing. Everybody thinks they need a hard ball, they need a cue ball, they need a lacrosse ball, and they're going to grind and grind. I'll see people on the floor sitting on a ball or sitting on a chair, and I'm like, well, that's insane because you're creating all kinds of pain, and you're going to put a hole in your wall if you try it on the wall. Tennis ball works just fine. It's soft enough that it doesn't bruise the skin, but it's hard enough that you can feel the pressure. And as you put a little bit of pressure there and use your breath and your brain, the same thing with stretching, you can get that muscle to soften.
Mm, mm. What about like people who are lifting weights and weightlifters
Yeah,
and bodybuilders?
yeah.
Like, what are their muscles doing, and what can they do?
So
Because you talked about
let,
hard
let,
bodies, right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think of a bodybuilder. You see a bodybuilder, they can't straighten their arms out and their shoulders are rounded in. I mean, they look good in some people's eyes to a certain point because they put in a lot of work with that. But what they're doing is go back to that rubber band. They're every day they're tensing that rubber band, twisting, 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 and at some point something will tear. And that's where
Mm,
you'll see guys who, they'll tear a muscle in their shoulders or they'll tear a bicep or they'll tear a chest muscle, something like that. And while it's happened is that they've twisted, twisted, twisted that muscle with the tension so much that there was nothing else left to give. Just like if you keep twisting a rubber band, at some point it'll just tear in two. Well, the muscles
mm,
will work very similar to that.
yeah.
And
Because
so, go
yeah,
ahead.
someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger who's still
Yeah,
working out at his
yeah,
age.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And so if you incorporate the stretching with that, you can still work out. And as long as you keep your flexibility, so you take the tension out of the muscles, doesn't really matter how big you get. You can get as big as you want.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Wow. This has been like a crash course in
I understand. I get this every day. I always say to my clients when they come here, if you remember 5% of what I told you today, you're great.
well, like fortunately we have a recording of this, which means
Yeah,
that
yeah.
people will be able to watch it over and over again.
Yes.
But there's also a wealth of knowledge in your YouTube channel, which will
There, and also I have a book that I just finished. I spent
oh,
4 years writing a book, and the book is
wow.
like a manual. It's on Amazon. It's called Stretch
Mm,
and Release. It's like
hmm
a manual. It talks about nutrition. It talks about why most traditional treatments work part-time or fail completely. And then the last part of the book actually gets into specific things like the chest, the neck, the shoulders, and so forth, with examples of how to do the stretches. And you can scan a QR code in it that'll give you all the stretches that go with those.
mm. Well, before we kick
Yes.
into the quick fire questions, um, from a mindset perspective, what would you like to say to the listeners and the viewers?
I would say from a mindset, again, go back and think of your body like you would a car.
Mm,
We all love our cars and we take a lot of care for our cars. The car you can trade in, obviously the body you can't trade in. And it's like, so if you are not at an older age, you're in your 30s and 40s, now is the time to really start learning about how to maintain this body at optimal level so that when you get into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, you can enjoy your life like you do today. If
mm,
you're already in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, don't get frustrated and hopeless, but take your time, be patient with it, start doing these things, and you'll start to slowly see that your body will start to come back out. Some of that stiffness will go away. Obviously, you may have some damage you can't get away from, but if we can get your pain to drop by 50, 60%, I mean, what an awesome thing that would be. But you
yeah,
got to be patient with it. It's not going to happen overnight.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, we're going to do the quick fire questions now. You can
Okay.
choose to answer this in a few words or a sentence. First one is, what is one piece of advice you'd give someone who's starting their healing journey?
Food. Understand what your body needs to consume food.
Mm, food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's been the biggest inspiration in your life and why?
I would say a guy named Aaron Mattis, I talked about earlier with the active isolated stretching. He gave me the opportunity to study with him for 6 months, and he taught me a new way to think about the muscles of the human body.
Mm, mm. What's your definition of success, and has that definition changed for you over time?
It has. When I was younger, success was about money. Success is if you wake up in the morning, you love what you do, you love the people that are in your life, you're grateful for everything that you have. That's success.
Mm, mm. What is one common mistake people make when stretching?
They work too hard.
Hmm. Yeah,
I see that all the time. They work too hard.
work too hard. Yeah. If you could go back in time, what is one thing that you wish you knew about muscle health earlier?
Oh my gosh. If I understood the role of the brain with my muscles when I was an athlete in high school, I was a three-sport athlete. I would have probably gotten to college level, maybe even professional level, just knowing what I know today.
Mm, mm, yeah. And what is your ultimate vision for helping people live pain-free?
A couple of things. Number one, through the online platforms, creating recorded programs, and then setting up a school to teach therapists how to do this on a one-on-one basis. I mean, I'm one person. I can only see so many people a day. I really want to develop a school that I can teach people how to make a living doing this.
Mm, awesome. Thank you. And the closing question, this is a myth buster. So what is the biggest myth you'd like to bust about chronic pain, and what's one message you hope everyone listening takes away from this conversation?
Chronic pain is within your control. You have to understand there's many parts to the problem. Food becomes a big part of that because you want to reduce the inflammation. Muscles become a huge part because they react to your thought process. And then mindset triggers whether you're going to eat the right foods and take care of your body correctly. If you look at those
Mm,
three things when you're dealing with chronic pain, it may seem hard in the beginning, but if you can just get the wheels turning and get your chronic pain to start slowing down, it becomes much easier.
absolutely. Wow. What a interview it's been. Thank you, Butch.
You're
You've
welcome.
blown
Thank you.
you've blown my mind in many ways in terms of stretching and muscles and mindset and everything and food as well. And you know, none of this is separate. It's
Yeah.
all integrated, right? And
Every bit of it.
every bit of it, yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today. Um,
Thank you,
and
Anthony.
if Thank you. And if you've been watching or listening to this podcast episode and you'd love to, and you've got some insights out of this, I encourage you to share this on your social media and tag Butch and myself in so we can interact with you. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe and follow this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes, and share this episode with someone that really could benefit from it today. And lastly, I just want to say you are loved and you are worthy. Champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.